Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bollywood Cinema Club, a show where we take a look at Indian cinema every other week. I am the host of the Culture Cast, Chris Dashu, the show where this show spun off from. And on this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, I am joined by my good friend. You've heard him here before plenty of times. He's a frequent guest. He's quickly becoming an Indian cinema scholar. That might be a bit of a stretch, but who knows? Maybe in a couple years, we could both be considered that. Your friend and mine, DC Titans executive producer, Richard Haddam.
I'm getting better. I'm beginning to recognize the actors, the names, bit by bit. I do feel like I'm becoming familiar.
Hey, and you know what? That's a good thing, because on this episode of the Bollywood Cinema Club, we're going to be taking a look at a film that stars Hrithik Roshan, who you and I talked about all the way back in Doom 2 so many months ago, and at this point almost a year ago. We're going to be talking about a little film that he did in 2003, directed by his father, Koi Mil Gaya, otherwise known as I Have Found Someone. So the film is directed by Rakesh Roshan, and it stars Hrithik Roshan and Preeti Zinta, and Hrithik Roshan plays Rohit Mehta, a man who was dropped on his head before birth, causing an intellectual disability, all of this stemming from his father's obsession with aliens. The plot of this movie is something it's a hell of a setup. High concept, one might say. And where it goes from there, we'll talk about. But along the way, we meet Johnny Lever and a whole bunch of people, including a cameo from Rakesh Roshan, who I'm assuming you realized who he was at the beginning of the movie, because he looks just like Hrithik Roshan, but without hair. The guy at the beginning of the movie who played his dad in the movie is his actual father.
Okay.
Also the director of the movie.
Got it. All right.
So
no, I did not make that connection, but
he looks like him in the face. He has the same nose and the same eyes as Hrithik Roshan. He doesn't have the same dancing ability, though, best I can tell, because we'll be talking about that. But Richard, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Koi Mil Gaya.
Oh God, where do I begin? This movie, I can say that this movie grew on me. I liked it. My enjoyment of it was in inverse proportion. Oh, no, I guess in what is the metaphor I'm going for? The longer the movie went on, the more I liked it. So if we graph it, I was moving right along. If the runtime moves upward, my enjoyment moved upward, rather than as it went on, I liked it less. It was not that. There. Is that confusing?
I'm as confused as I was by this movie.
Well, I wasn't. I mean, like the movie's not confusing on a plot level.
It is strange. I think the word I would use is it's a strange movie because it meshes together two seemingly disparate things. A movie that would be in a lot of ways considered, I think I pitched it to you, Forrest Gump meets E.T. And it pretty much is. Hrithik Roshan's character is developmentally disabled, no fault of his own, no fault of anyone's, really. I mean, I guess you could blame his father, but that, again, there's a thing that happens that causes him to be the way he is, as opposed to, Forrest Gump, where he's just born that way. I mean, Rohit is born that way, but again, things happen.
Well, there's a car accident, right? It's not like he didn't get dropped on his head.
But he was dropped. But that is what happened. The doctor says, like, your baby had a brain injury from being in the car that flipped over.
Right. But it's not like he was born and they were holding him.
No, it was literally
over a dog.
Right. No, literally, he had a brain injury in his mother's womb. And it all stems from his father's obsession with aliens, because their car gets buzzed by aliens. At least that's the way I interpreted what was going on at the beginning of the movie.
Well, now that I think about it, there's got to be a lot of people. I mean, that has to happen all the time. Like, just a pregnant person is in a car accident or falls or something. And it's like, oh yeah, just the physical injury has affected the development of the fetus, and it's going to be reflected once that fetus is born. So it's like, although I can't say that I can't call to mind anyone I know or any event where it's like, oh yeah, that happened to my cousin or something. I don't know.
Well, I can't even think of another fictional analog for what this movie is claiming how this character gets to this point. Because again, in most of the movies where there's a character who's developmentally disabled, like Forrest Gump, it's just, well, he's just born this way. Or Sean Penn and I Am Sam, it's like he's just born this way. In this, I mean, again, in this movie, it feels like, I mean, look, obviously there's a reason they do it the way that they do it so they can undo it later in the movie, and having him be born that way, I think may have felt a little morally strange. We're fixing you again, like when we think about people that have developmental disabilities, it's not a matter of fixing them. There's nothing to fix, and that's why this felt like it needed to be like something that happened that can be corrected. It's a very thin razor's edge here of this movie. Like it's I mean, it walks that razor's edge at the beginning, setting this up like rather well, I think. I wasn't offended. Maybe I should have been, but I wasn't.
Oh, I mean, look, at a certain point, look, it doesn't happen a lot now. I'd say in the last 10 years. Well, I would say anything post Tropic Thunder.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. put a name to where it came from. Right. Like,
right. It's like that sort of cultural viewpoint of the developmentally disabled as somehow enchanted.
Right.
It's a popular trope. And
Rain Man,
and I mean, and Forrest Gump, and on and on and on. I mean, but there were so many movies that this. I do think Forrest
Gump, having just seen it, Forrest Gump addresses it better than I remember. And again, Forrest is just slow. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they make it seem like he's just slow, and that's all it is. Like this movie, there's clearly more going on.
Well, the way they say it in the subtitles is that he can never progress past a particular age in terms of not only intellect but also emotionally. He's never going to emotionally mature past the level of like an 8 or a 9-year-old. That's what they say in the movie. So
which is why he's a literal grown adult in a room with children.
Right. And his group of friends are all 10 years younger. Now, well, I was going to say 10 years younger, but help me out here. How old is he in the movie? Like physically, how many years before was he born? Is he 18?
They didn't say like 10 years later, 15 years later. It just jumps to now he's an adult. So I was actually going to ask you kind of I felt like he's like 18, maybe. I mean, look, I think a lot of things in this movie work because of how goddamn charming Hrithik Roshan is. And I think, though, he looks a little old to be playing the role that this movie cast him in. And I say that only because it really should have been someone who was closer to 18 to 21.
Well, and I get mixed up because we're watching these movies and they're new to me. And some of them feel very modern. And then it's like, oh, this movie was made in 2013. Like Doom, I believe, was Doom 2. Because Doom 1
was like early 2000s.
And then he was in Doom 2.
Yeah, he was the villain in the second one who survives. He's the only one that survives. The one with the girl at the cafe.
Right. And my years ago, like
that was 2006.
Look, easy enough to find out how old
he was. 27. He was 27 when they filmed this movie.
He was 27.
This movie came out 20 years ago, and he's 47 right now.
He's 47. This is not helping. And what year is it?
Excuse me. He's 49, so he was 29 when Mil Gaya came out. He was born in 74. So he was 30. That's my point. Like he looks like an adult. And I can't drag the movie for it because it's Hrithik Roshan. You're going to cast a big name actor in a role like this because Shah Rukh Khan has done it. Amir Khan has done it now with Lal Singh Chadha. And you could even say PK, where he plays an alien. But Hrithik Roshan is just he's 10 years too old. And that's because again, he looks like a grown ass adult in this movie, and he is meant to be. But I would have a hard time believing that an adult is in a school with children until he's 30.
Right.
If he was 18, I kind of believe it.
Well, that sort of feeds into a general okay, so how old what is it? Pretty or Prietti? What's her name?
Preeti Zinta.
Preeti Zinta. Then you wonder, well, how old is she supposed to be? And how old is Raj supposed to be? Because Raj definitely looks late 20s.
Preeti Zinta at the same time as Hrithik Roshan, she's 28 and he's 29 when they're making this movie.
Okay. So, and they're playing characters that are supposed to be closer to like 21, probably.
Best I can interpret. Yeah.
And those other guys, like the gang that travels around with Raj, the character played by Rajat Bedi.
Yep.
Okay.
Rajat Bedi.
Rajat Bedi.
Yeah.
He definitely looks older.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, but that all having been said, okay, we've sorted the age, but his performance, like everything else, kind of grew on me. This is a weird kind of performance. It takes a minute to sort of settle into as a viewer. For me, it's like, oh, okay, because it's a little cringeworthy, just conceptually.
Right.
Now, was it Amir Khan who played the character in Doom 3?
Yeah.
The slow brother.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's okay. So Amir Khan's done it 3 times, best I can tell then. The Forrest Gump movie, PK, and then, I forgot that was part of that movie. Jeez Louise.
Yeah. So, and in both movies, it's approached in a kind of, I want to say, a warm way. It feels like we're supposed to feel engaged and protective and empathetic with the character. And I'm not. Now, Amir Khan pulls off a trick because he's playing 2 roles. So you're comparing his performance as a mentally disabled person literally right alongside his performance as a, heroic adult in Doom 3. So you can sort of watch what he's doing and how extreme he's getting. And I thought it was a fairly controlled performance, even though the character is a bit contrived. This one is even more so. I mean, this one is, we're spending a lot of the early part of this movie sort of celebrating the world of children and a childlike point of view in the world. So he's playing his role right next to 9-year-old children. Which makes it a little cringy, a little, I don't know if I'm okay with this.
It kind of worked for me.
Well, again, eventually it did, because I sort of settled into, okay, stop being,
Okay, I guess I maybe it seems like our buy-in moment was a little staggered.
Yeah.
But I kind of expected that. Like, this is the kind of movie where there may not be a moment where you buy in and you get to the end of it and you're like, oh my God, what a mess. Because mind you, this movie is 157 minutes long. So if you don't buy into what Hrithik Roshan is doing, more or less in the first 45 minutes, you're in for another 2 hours of this. Obviously, there's kind of a twist later on in the narrative that may or may not change how you feel about what he's doing. But a large portion of this movie is him playing a character who is intellectually disabled, but again, not to the point of someone like a Sean Penn in I Am Sam. Like, this is more like what Amir Khan is doing in Doom 3. It's really restrained. And this is in 03. That's what's the crazy thing. Like, this movie feels like it was made with more modern sensibilities regarding how you treat a character like this in your film.
Well, and yet at the same time, it's so heavy-handed in its everything.
I kind of feel like it has to be, though. Like, it feels kind of like look, let me ask you something. Is E.T. heavy-handed?
What? Not as heavy-handed as this.
You don't. Oh, no. There's a point where E.T. is lit up like Jesus, Rich.
Right, but I'm talking about music, editing. I'm talking about what's on the page. I mean, we're getting a lot of time of him on a scooter. I mean, again, picture a movie. If you had Will Ferrell playing, I guess it's not the same thing because obviously I'm thinking of Elf. That's not a good example. Like if you had
It might be. I see what you're getting at, though. Childlike wonderment embodied.
If there's a young actor, who's, in their late 20s, early 30s right now, who is considered sort of a leading actor, and I know there are, I just don't know them because I'm hopelessly out of date with future films.
Miles Teller.
Okay, picture Miles Teller in a movie right now where he's literally riding around on a scooter with a bunch of kids, and the filmmaking is shooting it like it's a Kool-Aid commercial. Like, they're not trying to just show like a naturalistic view of this guy sort of hanging out with these kids. It is like a commercial, just bright, sunny day. And he's blinking and looking up at the sky and singing about the birds, and all the kids are singing. And he's, sticking his jaw out. And you're just like, oh, come on. This is a lot, and he's kind of doing the, and he's squinting up and it's like, we're free as birds. And
the mugging is a little much.
But the movie is mugging.
Right. No, that's fair.
He's mugging, the movie's mugging, and those kids are mugging. Like, it's like, okay, kids, smile and don't ever stop unless you're laughing in hysterics.
Right.
But you're never less than grinning like a jack-o'-lantern. And I get it. It's like, look, I don't expect subtlety and naturalism from the majority of the films we're watching, because that just doesn't seem to be sort of the dominant language of Indian cinema, okay, at this point, and by the people we're seeing. So I'm not surprised when it's like, why do a 9 when you can do a 13 on a scale of 1 to 10 of anything? Action, romance, tragedy, music.
I was going to say, how many of these movies have we seen together now, and you were expecting subtlety? Man.
Well, I mean, we saw that one that Papaka Vishmana.
Oh, sure, but that's South Indian.
Okay, all right. See, and I haven't.
This is straight up. This is straight up Bollywood. It's a Yash Raj film. They're the ones who produce the Romantics. That's Yash Raj. That's Uday Chopra's family's. They made all the Doom movies. Like, that's right. Them. This is them now. I mean, Hrithik Roshan.
Chopra's name was right. Oliver War.
Right. And Hrithik Roshan is a family friend of theirs. Because in the Romantics, they talk about how Hrithik Roshan was doing dance competitions with Aditya Chopra when they were like 13. Aditya Chopra is Yash Raj Chopra's son. One of the two sons, the other one being Uday Chopra.
Who's Ali.
Who's Ali in Doom. Right. So it's like everybody, but like this is the mainstream movies of the time. Pushpaka Vimana is like, I don't know how you would describe it, because we don't have something similar in the United States where it's like it's a part of the country that makes movies for that part of the country, and that part of the country is into those movies, and maybe those movies don't migrate to the other coast. It's like if East Coast and West Coast if there was somewhere on the East Coast that was like Hollywood and, on the East Coast, that would be the closest that we could get. But again, people are watching everything like that. That just kind of isn't the case, because Telugu and Tamil films are in a different language as well. Like, this film is in Hindi. Telugu and Tamil films are in Tamil and Telugu, which are a different language. So, we just didn't see it because in Pushpaka Vimana, there just happened to not be any dialogue.
Well, and so I am slowly, very slowly, and without a lot of outside study, I'm trying to just experience these as artifacts and just like, okay, what did I think of it? But I'm slowly getting the greater context, which I don't have, and you're explaining it to me now, but I'm sort of like, oh, okay. And okay, I know that actor, I know that person.
But the industry of our country. I mean, it's its own thing. I mean, just imagine all of the intricacies there, and again, like, I don't know the industry either. I just know what I've looked up and learned and read and everything else. Because again, I'm no more part of it than you are. We're part of a different industry here. Globally, we're part of it. But yeah, it's hard to place what and where and how this fits in with everything else that's going on at the time, because again, I do know what was going on at the time, but it's not necessarily obvious, because you and I could talk about what was going on in the States in 2003. That was like Born Identity. That was like the year, that was around the time Born Identity came out and like revitalizing franchises and making them more serious and darker. That's like 03, 04. So we're in a different time in our cinematic history in the United States where things are starting to be a little bit more serious and dark and grounded in reality.
And I'm bringing to it a context of my own aesthetic, which is 25 years older than you,
right?
But obviously very Western. And then at the same time, though, so I try to sort of relax that contextual, whatever it is I'm bringing, and sort of just, but then what's funny is that these movies are so influenced by the West, then it drags that back to the forefront. The notion, and the little reading that I did on Wikipedia about this movie, and I guess Rakesh Roshan, I don't know if he denied or downplayed.
Oh, I'm glad you saw this. I'm glad you saw this because I was like, no fucking way, pal. You can't there's one scene in this movie where it's like, if you didn't take it from that, there's nothing else you could have taken it from.
Well, it's E.T. and so much of this, it's absolutely inescapable. You cannot, it is either disingenuous or an out and out lie. And it's fine. Do whatever you want. But my God, there's, the entire sequence at the end is emotionally shot for shot.
My wife walked in at the beginning of the movie and saw them riding scooters. My wife walked in at the end of the movie 2.5 hours later and said, "Oh, that's why they put scooters in the movie, huh?" And I was like, "Oh, that is the sole reason there are scooters in the movie. That is the sole reason, is so Hrithik Roshan can ride a scooter with an alien on the front, just like E.T." No, when I read that thing about Rakesh Roshan, I was like, "You gotta be fucking joking." Yeah. It's a lie. Again, not trying to throw shade, but like, there's no way. There's no way. There's just no way. Like, if it's not inspired by E.T., then tell me what's it inspired by. I'll sit and listen. You know what I mean? Like, I know. Tell me then.
No, nothing. I just came up with it out of nowhere.
Right. It's easier to deny what it isn't than say what it is. Like, oh, it's not that, I swear. But what it is, I can't tell you.
Right. And not only that, but Close Encounters. There was a lot of Close Encounters in this too.
Bum.
Right? I mean, it's like, fine. That's not. I made a decision not to decide to hold that against the movie because, look, I don't know enough about India and film distribution and all that to know if E.T. was a big part of their culture ever. I don't know if American, for the viewer, did they see E.T. in 1982 when we saw it? Did they see it 10 years later, 5 years later, 20 years later? Were there local audiences in India watching this going, well, this is just like E.T.? Or did they have no idea what E.T. was? I don't know. So just as we culturally appropriate, a lot of our filmmakers in the last 30, 40, 50 years have seen a lot more international cinema than the typical film goer and felt very free to borrow from that, knowing that their sources would probably remain hidden from most eyes. Critics may know what they're doing, but audiences, it's going to feel new and fresh until someone says, why? Have you never seen a French New Wave film? Have you never seen, a Kurosawa film?
So I want to mention to you, because we bring up E.T., so I will tell you the story that gets brought up when India and E.T. are brought up, since you broached the topic. Satyajit Ray, very well-known Indian filmmaker. You've probably heard of him. I think we covered one of his movies, Charulata, earlier on the show. He wrote a film called The Alien, and Arthur C. Clarke had E.T. screened for him, and apparently Arthur C. Clarke was friends with Satyajit Ray and called him up and said, hey, you should sue Steven Spielberg because your script is essentially being plagiarized by Steven Spielberg to write E.T.
Oh, really? So The Alien was an Indian film that was made before E.T.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I want to see it. And it was
right?
Satyajit Ray?
Satyajit Ray. So again, there's an interesting kind of side story even with how is something like E.T. being received in India, because again, they're writing things that are not, look, it's not like nobody has heard of E.T., but again, to your point, what is the critical reception of a movie not made for the audience in a country?
Well, yeah, and stuff. as I get older, I kind of realize stuff just gets, it's either out there or it gets borrowed, appropriated, remixed, and it's being done with more and more transparency, which I think is good.
Right. I'm with you.
From music that's like, yeah, we're using a very famous bass line from a 1960s song, but I'm putting on a rap track or a hip hop or whatever, and you're like, oh, okay. And then a lot of people who experience the second thing first then are surprised later to go, oh, that's where that's from. And we've talked about this before. It's like, I'm trying to show my kids who are teenagers and in their 20s, I'll show my 15-year-old, he's never seen The Shining. I show it to him and he's like, oh, that's where the Family Guy jokes come from. That's where the, Simpsons jokes come from. And I'm like, yeah, except this. So this is the thing. It's like, oh, right. But I've already seen, like, I already know all the best parts of The Exorcist because I there was a joke about it on, King of the Hill or something. It's like,
right.
It's like, okay, all right. And then, so did Rakesh Roshan steal Mil Gaya from Spielberg? Did Spielberg steal Alien away from Satyajit Ray to make E.T.? I don't know.
Well, do you want part of the answer?
Yes.
Satyajit Ray's film, The Alien's unproduced. It was an American and Indian cross-produced film, and the film was intended to star, and I'm not kidding, Peter Sellers and Marlon Brando.
Wait, but you're saying the movie got made or it didn't get made?
It did not get. It was, the script was written, which is the issue. It was a script that was floating around, and Satyajit Ray was in the works with Columbia Pictures to make the film. It was going to be an Indian director directing an American film.
American or British with Peter Sellers and, I guess Marlon Brando. But wait a second. Okay, how close could Alien have been to E.T. if the two stars were going to be Marlon Brando? The
plot revolves around a spaceship that lands in a pond in rural Bengal. The villagers begin worshiping it as a temple risen from the depths of the earth. The alien, known as Mr. Ong, establishes contact with a young village boy named Haba, meaning dumb in Bengali, through dreams, and also plays a number of pranks on the village community in the course of its short stay on planet Earth. The plot contains ebullient presence of an Indian businessman, a journalist from Calcutta, and an American engineer.
It doesn't.
It doesn't
sound
not
overwhelmingly like E.T. to me.
But it sounds more like Mil Gaya more than anything else.
Well,
a quote dumb village boy like that. If that is not a direct descendant, maybe not E.T., but Mil Gaya can't exist in a vacuum without knowing about that, because that's
right. And yet at the same time, it seemed like everyone was saying, oh, this was completely groundbreaking in 2003 because aliens really hadn't been in Indian films until this. And I'm like, really? Like there wasn't a science fiction?
More or less. It just wasn't really a thing.
Wow. Okay. So, which makes it even feel more like E.T.
Right. It really does.
No, but there's plenty of E.T. in this movie. I mean, shot for shot, and also just emotionally, sort of, again, kind of like the soul of a child being able to accept the outsider.
Right.
While the regimented adults see only danger and feel only fear.
Right.
And I get that. Okay, then that's a theme, and you can do whatever you want with it, and they work with it here, and that's great. It's a little strange, and I don't know if maybe there's just not a ton of like little kid stars. I mean, are there? Like, is there a tradition of 12-year-old movie stars in Bollywood?
Not in the same way that there are culturally in our country.
Yeah, like why not just? But what's interesting about this is you have, in a way it's better than E.T. because you've got a guy who is in an adult's body but is mentally a child. And before he discovers the alien, he discovers the alien woman.
Right. Which, we haven't even watched a romantic comedy, the two of us, on this show or on the Culture Cast. This first half of this movie is a romantic comedy, to the nines. Preeti Zinta and Hrithik Roshan are so cute together, dancing in the rain. I mean, and he's got impeccable choreography. I mean, Jesus, mother of God. If only I could move on my feet the way that man does. But
Right.
the first hour and a half of this movie is just the two of them falling in love. The alien doesn't show up until literally the intermission of the movie.
Yeah. And of course, and then you've got the bad guy. You've got just the bully. He's literally a bully, which is so funny because that is also a trope from movies about much younger people.
Right.
like this guy isn't a bully on the grade school yard or even in the high school locker room. He appears to be a 30-year-old bully.
I like that he carries a basketball with him everywhere he goes, because later in the movie, when Hrithik Roshan and Preeti Zinta are in the club together, he shows up carrying a basketball. And I'm just like, what? We get it. He's a bad guy. Like, he's like, I'm going to tussle with you right here. Like, what the actual fuck?
Yeah, his weapon is a basketball.
Yeah, and he takes that basketball to the face a couple times. So,
oh God, yeah,
yikes! That's not good.
Yeah, no, I mean, and when you're wearing wire rim glasses, it feels like that's not going to end well,
right? So obviously, I mean, this, we've talked about it before, and you and I kind of haven't touched on it, but touched on it in other episodes of the show. This movie really feels in a lot of ways like a tale of two movies as well, because the first half of this movie is, like we've kind of mentioned, a romantic comedy. And then the second half is more or less E.T. Like the conventional, not the conventional storytelling aspects of E.T., but the conventions that E.T. has. This movie has the same conventions of hide the alien, introduce your friends to the alien has powers that we get to see, all of those things that you expect from a Alien on Earth movie where it's funny and not, Predator. Which, I mean, that could have been fun. Hrithik Roshan, friend, boom, the end. But the second half of this movie, it's very different. I mean, it's the same movie, but Preeti Zinta and Hrithik Roshan aren't doing all the lovey-dovey stuff as much because there's a different plot device moving it along.
Right. And it's not like the love story suddenly takes a back seat to the relationship between Rohit and Jadoo. And hang on a second, I've got to show you something, okay? Can you hang on one second?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I was so charmed that the alien's name was Jadoo because look at John Keel's first book.
Oh, man. That's wild.
Yeah. And he calls it Jadoo because that's the word for magic in Hindi. And this is about John Keel traveling the Far East and unearthing mysteries of India and Egypt and the Himalayas.
Hey, he knew. I'm gonna have to pick that. I'm gonna have to pick that up now.
Yeah, no, it's fun. That book is fun.
So what did you think of the Alien? Given that, again, this is a special effects movie in the second half of the film.
I am sorry. I had no problem with Jadoo. I was
Me
fine.
either.
He had a little fish face, and he was kind of like,
I think that was probably like the having to make his face that long to get the mechanics in the face.
Yeah, but that was fine with me. It was, and I liked his his voice was like really low and kind of echoey, and it was fine. Because again, if taking the structuralist approach, which I always do, if you just break it down, Jadoo just shows up as a way to further the relationship between Rohit and Nisha. That's all it is. It's like he will not be able to have his Flowers for Algernon moment,
right,
without a device. Now, in Flowers for Algernon, the device was a new chemical, a new like a pharmaceutical breakthrough,
right.
And in the movie Awakenings by our favorite new director Penny Marshall, it was also, it's like, oh, people can sort of like come out of the haze of dementia before drifting back in.
For Homer Simpson, it was a crayon up his nose.
There you go.
I mean, that's Flowers for Algernon is what inspired that the Homer is smart now episode. I mean, that's copped one for one from that again. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, it's not a new thing, but for listeners who don't know what Flowers for Algernon is, Cliff Robertson plays a developmentally disabled adult who, in the middle of the movie, through a pharmaceutical breakthrough, is able to not only sort of mature intellectually, but become quite smart. And it sort of unleashes, his intellectualism and what that allows him to achieve as an adult in adult relationships before the belated realization that this is not permanent. And then he withdraws again. And it's somewhat tragic and poignant. And so this was playing with those themes. It's like, is Rohit's ability to mature physically and intellectually going to help or hurt his relationship with Nisha?
Right.
And it sort of does, it's like for a minute, it looks like it's hurting it, but then it ultimately never really does. It doesn't ever seem to be a threat. It seems to only help things. What's interesting about it is that he doesn't mature to adulthood emotionally. Emotionally, he's always the 9-year-old.
Right.
He gets really smart and really strong, but it's almost like those are weapons placed into the hands of a 9-year-old. He does not approach a man-child. He does not approach his new abilities with a mature outlook like, well, look, now that I'm really smart, I should find a way to make some money and buy a house and settle down.
Right.
It's like, no, I'm still going to run around and have fun. And, let's get a basketball team together with all of my child friends. And then for like 10 minutes, the movie becomes flubber.
Yeah, boy. Yeah. There were a couple sequences in this movie that I feel like we could have done without. That is one of them.
Well, this is when that happened, I was like, okay, if there was any doubt left in my mind, this is a movie for kids.
Right.
This is
totally.
Preteen,
right.
Because they never get too gooey with the romance. There's some kissing, but it's never like
with tongues. It's never with tongues.
They're not jumping into bed. It doesn't feel adult. It feels very high school at best.
Well, and I mean, even the songs like Koi Mil Gaya, like I have found someone, the titular song, even that doesn't verge on the saccharine. It's still very kind of, not say surface level, but like pleasing in a way that I think everybody could appreciate. Not like, again, like not just adults, but like kids and adults be like, oh, I found someone. What that means is kind of, we'll figure it out, but I found you. And obviously then that kind of metatextually plays into the thing of Jadu being found as well. So it's, I found you.
Right. And magic. Jadu means magic. The alien is magical. The magic of love. I get it. What it isn't is what you get in what we saw like in Doom, where through dance and music, there's a real sexual, erotic, physical, like, your body and my body create a heat together sort of lyric running. And then it's like, oh, and I'm seeing that on the screen. That's exactly what is happening. This takes a step back from that. So it's like safe for kids, safe for parents. We're talking puppy love, and that's fine.
I mean, there are some kind of thirsty shots of Hrithik Roshan, but that's about it. They're very,
I was plenty thirsty for old pretty Zinta.
We haven't mentioned Rekha, who plays Hrithik Roshan's mom. She's fantastic.
She is, but she is the long-suffering.
Yeah, of
like that is a performance with tears in its eyes.
The
99% of the time,
the thankless of thankless roles, playing the mother. Yeah.
And it's not even, but it's the kind of mother. It's the long suffering, like the tragedy of my life, and my husband died. My child will never be what I had hoped and wished for. But that great scene, I mean, her great scene is when she dresses down Nisha and Ray and their whole group of friends who have been mean to her son, and basically saying, how dare you? You know what's going on with him, and yet you still would torture this person who is not your equal. He may be your age, but he isn't, and you know that.
Right.
And if you're gonna, and of course she gets to that, the line you have to get to, which is, if you're normal and he's not normal,
right,
well then I'll take not normal any day.
Right. I love how they have to get there every time. It's like we just can't fucking help ourselves. Like,
no, you get your bingo card and you mark that one off, and it's like, okay, we're getting closer to bingo. So but she was great. She was great.
Did you like I almost said Peter Coyote just to be an ass, but oh my God, I don't know how to say it. Coyote? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
The Peter Coyote stand-in, Mukesh Rishi playing the inspector. He has that great face. He was in a movie Heather and I did, Sarfaraz, where he plays opposite Amir Khan, and he's so good in that. And he's not given much to do here, just kind of be mildly. He's about as antagonistic as Peter Coyote is in E.T., like mildly antagonistic, but they don't replace the guns with flashlights in this movie like they would do in subsequent ET releases. But again, like they even have like the trappings of that in this movie. It doesn't really jibe with the rest of the movie. It honestly, of all the things that feel out of place, that storyline feels out of place. And what's funny is in E.T. it doesn't, but that's because E.T. is about the alien. I think you kind of hit on it best. This movie has nothing to do with an alien. Like, the alien is a vehicle through which our character experiences a change that is then made permanent, but it's not an alien movie. I mean, it is, but it's not. Like,
well, this movie is also twice the length of E.T. Like,
that's fair.
And with that, thank God there wasn't more of those, it's the government coming to get the alien. They did just enough to remind you that, okay,
it's the ticking time bomb of get the alien away.
Yeah, the alien's time is going to be limited, and that's fine. There was a lot of interesting. I do want to. We were talking about Rekka. I want to go back for a second. The most shocking and upsetting scene, frankly, in the whole thing was when she discovers that he's been using Dad's computer to contact the alien, and she just wails on him, just slapping his face back and forth. And I'm like, whoa, lady.
She goes off on his ass hard. She just teeing off, bang, and just smacks him one.
I mean, that to me was the most disturbing. And he's like, cowering on the ground, crying. And it's just like, whoa, okay. So that was upsetting, but there was only a little of that. Thank God.
This is the first time I believe you've seen Johnny Lever as well. He played Shalaram Sukhwani, the man whose windows keep getting broken out.
Oh my God.
He's an Indian comedian, by the way, if that's not readily apparent to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the American equivalent, like the, really over the top older actor. I was thinking of like certain performances by Eugene Levy.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, okay, he's on a whole. Well, I was going to say he's on a whole other level. He actually isn't. Everything in this movie is elevated tonally and emotionally, that his performance really isn't all that off kilter for the movie. But
it's really good. I like seeing him in things. I mean, again, he's a favorite of mine, just kind of showing up randomly. He shows up in Mahakal for a while. He shows up in this for a couple scenes. Like, again, and I think that further reinforces in my mind that this is a film for families, and it is a funny, more comedic film. I mean, you mentioned this movie's twice the length of E.T. It is, but I think I enjoy it more because it feels less proselytizing than E.T. does. Because that's honestly, by the end of E.T., I always kind of feel a little icky because the movie it does such a good job at pulling at your heartstrings. It feels like by the end of it, it could have let a couple moments just not happen, but they had to do it. I don't know. E.T. always feels very emotionally manipulative to me. And look, I have no problem crying at movies, but E.T. is one that I don't like watching, and I don't watch it very often. My mom likes it, though. I know she's a fan.
Yeah, I don't find myself going back to E.T. as much as some other ones, but it's funny because, I mean, that is a very legitimate argument that American audiences will have toward a film. It's like, well, it was just so emotionally manipulative that, like, I take points off in a way. And yet I don't apply that scale when I watch Bollywood movies, because I feel like, oh, well, that's kind of the point. Like, they're not even trying for naturalism or subtlety. So how can I take points off? Like, maybe watching American musicals from earlier in the past century, watching Rodgers and Hammerstein movies, watching Sound of Music, I kind of take my foot off the gas of, hey, you're not being subtle. It's like, I get it. It's Julie Andrews and a bunch of kids up against Nazis. It's about as close to Bollywood as we're going to get, kids are cute, songs are great. Just please let the good guys win.
Right. And look, I mean, in Bollywood cinema, the good guys don't always win, but everybody has a good time in the end. So,
right.
And that, I mean, the entertainment factor does seem to be, and obviously is, a huge portion of this, because going to the movies is a thing that is not just, if you watch The Romantics and you listen to Shah Rukh Khan talk about it, he grew up in a lower middle class family, and going to the movies is not something everybody did all the time. It was special occasion. It was a big deal to go to the movies. So if you're going to go see a movie, it better be 3 hours. It better be 2 movies. I mean, that's the fucking thing here. Like, I really fucking hate people complain. I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I hate when people complain about long movies in regards to Indian cinema, because it's literally just 2 movies. That's all it normally is. Because again, like, if you understand the cultural aspect of what Indian cinema is doing for people in India, then it better be something. It better be substantial in a way where I leave and I've spent a portion of my day going to the movies, and that portion of my day is hopefully a memorable portion that I will return to in the future, but it needs to be something special.
Right. And maybe that's why some of the movies we've seen have tried so hard to be all things, to be musical, to be comedy, to be action, thriller, drama, so that if you do see just one film this year, you feel like you've seen 5.
Right. Exactly.
That's, I never thought of it that way.
But again, like, it comes from and again, I'm not going to fault you for not thinking that way, because it's a cultural thing. I mean, so many of us, we talk about going to the movies on Friday night all the time. Like, all the time. You've mentioned it before when you were in high school. It's like, that's the thing that we were going and doing. Like,
oh yeah,
if you don't have expendable income, you can't go do it, even in this country. But again, in a continent of 3 billion people, like, or whatever the number is now, like, not everybody's going to have the income. So when everybody gets that together to go do it, it better be this thing. Because again,
and I feel like it's a I feel like it's a fault of my own that I don't hold the movie going experience in the same way I did. Maybe that's a function of aging. Maybe it's a function of the movies, but
I don't either. Just so you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I know people my age who still, or a little bit south of me, who going to see a film in the theater is a significantly different experience than just sitting at home on your couch and watching it. And I've come to sort of like find them interchangeable to a large degree. So many movies I saw in theaters when I was younger, I've only re-experienced on television, and I'm just bringing my memories to it. But I was going to say, it's true. In high school, it would be nothing for me to see 3 new releases in the course of a weekend. I'd see them all,
Right.
So it wasn't, and they're always trying to figure box office by, well, what's the movie that people are going to go see? But frankly, when we were kids in high school, we'd see all of them. It's just like, okay, well, first I'm going to see that one. And then, and then our second priority is this one. And then if we still just feel like it, we'll go see the third one. And movies came out. It feels like every single Friday, there were another 2 or 3 movies coming out that we were excited about. So yeah, I don't know. This there was that one review of Mil Gaya where which you probably read because we both read the Wikipedia page, where the person said, you go in expecting to, discover alien life, but what you really discover is your inner child.
I think that's putting it rather aptly.
Yeah. There was nothing. There were no real sour notes in this movie. Although I will, what we haven't discussed is there's another trope in this movie that is even, I think, more unbelievable than an alien landing and hiding in someone's shed. And that is the wildly attractive woman who is also has a soul so deep and rich and pure that she can literally fall in love with a drastically developmentally disabled adult, to the degree that you believe she would spend the rest of her life with that person simply because they are so pure. And the way they do it always is to sort of trade on toxic masculinity. So it's like, okay, if I have a choice between Raj, who's all ego and who's a real brute, And if he's beating up on this kid, well, how long before he's punching me?
Right.
How many years
right.
of marriage and add marriage and time and alcohol, and pretty soon I'm the one taking the punches. But you know what? Forget that. I want a different sort of man. But the only way I can have a different sort of man is to have a man who literally has never matured. So that's the only way I can be safe with a man who is emotionally present and won't ever attack me physically and harm me. And it's this weird, I mean, I know that's not it literally, but emotionally, that's what we're seeing.
That's the conceit.
That's the conceit. And it's been in other movies, but I always look at that and go, there doesn't really seem to be any real life analog here. I'm not seeing
only two choices. Only two. And that's, right. I mean, that's the problem. It's like life is not as restrictive as the cinematic narrative that they're portraying here. She could literally move away and never care about any of them ever again. Like,
right.
I mean, realistically, like, I mean, if you want to talk literalism, like that's what could literally happen. And that, but it doesn't, obviously, because again, like you said, there's a little bit of a kind of not ridiculous, but a kind of contrived conceit at the center of all of these movies. It's not just this one. I mean, it's in, I mean, Forrest Gump, man, Forrest Gump's a bad example because the character of Jenny is painted, but actually the character of Jenny is painted the way she is in that movie to do the kind of opposite side of the coin, where it's a woman who can't overlook that fact. And so she's always running away from it.
Right. You've seen it more recently than I have, and I know you covered it a couple of weeks ago, but I forget, because in a movie like Forrest Gump, like this movie, everyone is playing a character and a symbol and a historical viewpoint. Like in Forrest Gump, it's like, okay, you represent sort of the lost generation of every stage of the last, 20 years.
And didn't you know that liberalism is bad and conservatism is good?
Well,
the woman who is the free spirit pays in the end.
Yeah, boy, does she.
Boy, she does.
A lot of people pay in that movie, but yeah, I mean, that's a movie that there's things I really like about the experience of watching Forrest Gump, but I always have trouble kind of at the end going, yes, I endorse this film.
Yeah.
The Haddam administration has spoken.
4 more years of Forrest Gump. I'm with you. I had a hard time coming to that same conclusion with that movie, but this movie I didn't, because it feels like this movie comes from a purer place.
Yeah. Yeah.
In a way that, like, again, I know that might sound corny, cheeseball, throw whatever tag on it you want, but it feels like it comes from a place of like trying to tell a love story that just happens to have a little blue alien in it.
Right. And it's also, there's even a little bit of Nutty Professor in this where, where Maynard Krebs becomes Buddy Love.
Right.
And
the club scene in the third act. Yeah.
Right. Which, again, I mean, I'm a huge Nutty Professor fan, the Jerry Lewis version. But I did question, I'm like, because, according to, film trivia history, Hrithik Roshan lost weight.
Right.
To play the role of sort of a physically slight character. So we would, sort of, we would accept that along with the notion that he hasn't matured.
Because we know what Hrithik Roshan actually looks like.
Right.
Because he's literally yoked like a motherfucker.
Well, it's the joke where at a certain point in Mil Gaya, Rohit becomes Hrithik Roshan.
Yeah, really, like literally. He's like, he takes the glasses off and it's like, dun, da, da, da. Yeah.
Yeah. He everything short of pulling his shirt open and revealing.
He does flex his biceps. I mean, he flexes his biceps and his biceps pop out of his shirt. So,
well, okay. So we never see him as far as I can tell, we never see him without a shirt on until he is Hrithik Roshan.
Right. Right. More or less.
So my question was that always just sort of costuming and camera work? And then he just took his shirt off and it's like, yeah, okay, now here's the body I've always had in previous films and subsequent films. Was there any sort of movie magic that added to this?
I don't think so. I think it was just casting him and having him wear big shirts.
Okay. Which
I mean, again, like
always
I'm not
work.
well. Well,
if
and I
you've
don't.
got shoulders, you've got shoulders.
Well, and we're not. I mean, again, like I think they do they do speaking of magic, they do a very good magician trick of look over here while something else is going on over here. You're focusing on his performance, not really what he's dressed up and wearing, because again, the performance requires your attention. Because I think if you deviate from it, you kind of, like you said, it needs you to buy in, and I obviously it's a concerted effort by the filmmakers to not sexualize the character until they can.
Right. And even then, even the dance that he does when he again turns into Hrithik Roshan and can dance and has, the ripped
body of a god.
Yeah. But even that is sort of a fun, joyful, funny, dance routine where they're sort of, doing this weird sort of move and there's little comic bits distributed through the dance and so you can accept that, oh, suddenly a lot of girls are interested in him. And even then I'm sort of like, oh, are we going to do this now? Is Nisha going to see this and get upset and turn away and you've changed, I don't love you anymore? And it never really does that. I'm kind of glad, because it would just make me more impatient with her, I think.
Right. Well, and I don't think it needed to get to that point in the narrative. Like that would have been an unnecessary contrivance, I feel like.
Right. And she's schooled up. She knows what's happening. By then she knows about Jadoo, and she knows that, it's like, I know how this is happening and why it's happening. And I kind of like how she endorses it. It's like, great, now go to do the the hero championship basketball game, and everyone in the audience is literally seeing superhuman behavior from everyone on the court, and no one comments on it, and everyone just cheers because they win.
I mean, they don't take any note of it in Flubber either. There are people literally flying through the air in Flubber. Like, it's the same thing. Like that. Yeah. I mean, speaking about Jerry Lee Lewis, right? Because isn't he in Flubber?
Are you Jerry
the original
Lewis?
Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis is in the original Flubber.
No, it's Fred McMurray in The Absent-Minded Professor.
Okay,
he does that for Disney. Yeah. And there was definitely some Disney feelings in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty, I think it's a little bit more emotionally mature than a lot of Disney movies are, especially, I mean, if you want to compare this to Disney movies that were coming out at the time.
Yeah. I think that one basketball sequence is really felt like, oh, okay, this is the end of a, Dexter Riley movie.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the one part of the movie where I was like, it's like, I mean, I'm not saying 10 more minutes is really that big of a deal when we're talking 2.5 hours, but I mean, I would have taken 10 minutes less, because it's the most unbelievable scene in a movie where most everything is unbelievable as it is.
Right. Now, I want to bring something up, which is a little possibly controversial, but it became so overt in this movie in a particular way that I want to talk about it. And we haven't talked about it. And it's something I brought to your attention that you hadn't even noticed.
I'm glad that you were going to bring it up, because I was about to bring it up. So you beat me to it.
Yeah. It's Hrithik Roshan's right hand, his thumb. Okay. Yep. I noticed it in Doom, and I pointed and I mentioned it to you, and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then you went back and looked, and you were like, oh my God, because he has, there's an element of his physicality. His right thumb is sort of a double thumb,
right?
From the sort of the middle joint onward, it sort of becomes almost two thumbs. Now, a couple things. This movie is done fairly early in his career. This movie does not hesitate to show it. Now, the movie's directed by his dad, so a clear decision has been made early in the film. We're going to show his hand. We're going to have shots that are literally about him shaking hands or using his hand in a particular way.
Or sticking his hand out to people.
So you're going to see it. So this is just, we're not trying to hide anything. So it's out there. Great. What was interesting is that Jadoo had the same thumb.
Thank you for noticing it. Oh my God. It was so good. Holy shit. I was smiling from ear to ear when I saw that. I was like, oh man, they went there, didn't they?
They so totally went there. And at first I was like, wait a second, am I just imagining this? I've just got the thumb on the brain. And then then they absolutely, again, show Jadu's hand in a way that makes it very, and I'm like, wow, okay, there's something's going on here. We're linking these two characters, Now, at no point do they suggest that Jadu is the figment of anyone's imagination at all. But it's like, okay, this alien was meant for this guy.
Right. And did you realize that they did a spin-off series called Jebole to Jadu, all about our little blue friend Jadu, a animated show all about Jadu. That was a children's series that aired on Nickelodeon in India.
Right. Well, Nickelodeon India, which is
Nickelodeon
which has
in
total
India.
Indian content. And
right, including Jebole to Jadu.
Yes.
But that allows us to transition into, I think, probably the next thing we'll be talking about, Krish, a superhero movie that is a spinoff of this movie.
So what? And it's funny because I also read about, how the letter K figures into a lot of his movies. But now, is it a spinoff with the same characters, with Hrithik Roshan? Is he in the spinoffs?
Yep.
And he's playing Rohit?
I'm not going to tell you.
Okay. So wait, am I going to? So is that my next assignment?
That's the next thing. These? I mean, that's the next thing we watch. I mean, that's the thing. Like, really? What's wild about this movie is such an interesting starting place, and then where they go from here, I think, makes it even more over the top and wild. Because to give you a little bit of a little taste, a little tip of the tongue action. He is not only playing himself, Rohit, but he's also playing Rohit and Nisha's son.
And is it directed by Rakesh?
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right. I'm in.
And so is Krish 3. And until COVID happened, Krish 4 was announced for a 2020 release, still in the making now.
Okay, so clearly these were popular money.
Mil Gaya was immensely successful. It won multiple national film awards, including Best Film on Other Social Issues, and it won Filmfare Awards. So yeah, it won Best Film, Best Director, Best Actor per the critics, with Hrithik Roshan as well. So yeah, it was well regarded and well received. It was about 250 million and it made 823 million. Yeah.
Right. And no one, I mean, in the reviews that I glanced at, again, there was no one was like, oh my God, this thing is just eye-rollingly corny and it's so saccharine. There was none of that. Everyone sort of took it at face value and it's like, yeah, really good performance. He really proved he's an actor. Because I guess at the time it was sort of like, hey, is this guy's career going to take off or not? And then this movie sort of bought him the next handful of movies that then bought him superstardom.
Yeah, I want to watch Kaho Na Pyar Hai at some point. The movie it was like 3 years before this, where Hrithik Roshan kind of made his debut. But this is the movie that kind of cemented him as someone to watch, someone to keep an eye on. And then obviously, like you were mentioning, I mean, he's part of the Yash Raj Films Spyverse, which is now one of their kind of Marvel MCU equivalents. But I'm much more excited about that because I don't have to watch 30 fucking things to know what the hell's going on anymore. Marvel, yeah. Jesus Christ. But no, you're right. This is the movie that cemented Hrithik Roshan as not only just a pretty face, but also a talented actor. We've mentioned it a lot, but this movie really only works in a lot of ways because Hrithik Roshan is that good. He is that good. Even the scenes where it is cringy or contrived, his level of charisma carries me over that kind of initial abrasive hump of, really?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like a flavor that hits you in the first bite as like, I don't know if I want a full plate of this. Then you take a second bite, you're like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. And then before you know it, you finish the entire meal. And
you mix it with something else and it's got and it adds something else. Yeah. I mean, Hrithik Roshan, Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, Amitabh Bachchan, Abhishek Bachchan, Uday Chopra. These are all names of actors who I can't even think of an actor in the States right now working who I would cast in a movie to say this is our equivalent of any of these actors. The charisma and the expectation that is on their shoulders of the amount of people they have to entertain is so, I think in a lot of ways, inconceivable for us in this country. Because, again, like I've said it before and I'll say it again, they're venerated. Amitabh Bachchan, the fans of his come outside of his house every weekend to see him come out, and he comes outside and greets his fans, and then he just goes back inside his house. Tell me where that's happening here. Tell me, I mean, it's like we understand Indian cinema best we can. You and I have said that, but like I don't think we'll ever fully appreciate the cultural importance of Indian cinema because we're just never going to be Indian.
Well, I have questions. So he comes out of his house.
Yeah.
And and like they all show up.
They're already there. They know because he comes out the same time every weekend.
And he it's like the Pope. He comes out, waves, lets them see him. He acknowledges them. Then he goes back in. Do they leave?
I don't know. Probably.
Like, is this like, I would love that actually. If it was like, look, here's the thing. It's not, people aren't crazy. People aren't breaking into your house. People show up at a celebrity's house every weekend. They all gather. Then at 12 o'clock, the celebrity comes out, waves at everyone, says, you guys are awesome. I love you. Go see my next movie. Have a great day. Waves at them. They all get that moment. He goes back inside the house and they all slowly drift away. And by 12:15, his house is his house again. I would love that.
The Sunday Darshan at his residence in Jalsa. That's what it is. He took a 2-year kind of break from COVID, but started it back up last year in April. Yeah, dude, it is that. It is exactly that. There's nothing like that here. Like, what fucking tell me? Like, somebody write in and tell me where this is going on in the States like that. Because it's not.
Right.
Because no actor, like, even the craziest asshole fans of the craziest assholes on the internet, like Kim Kardashian or other people who have people obsessed with them to a unhealthy degree, like Taylor Swift, Beyonce, people who are stans for them, even they're not doing that.
Well, I wonder, is it the same for them? Like when they go to, do they fear for their lives and their own personal physical safety when they go to a restaurant? Or do people, I don't know, is just sort of a different way of dealing with fame? Do people get excited but not go absolutely apeshit and attack them? Or
I think it's probably a mix. I can't really. Those are just some things I haven't been able to glean. But again, I'm going on a journey, just like the rest of us are, of learning more about the cultural intricacies of this.
Right.
And so, best I can tell, actors in India they probably do go out. But again, they're probably like actors here. It's a little bit, a little reserved, a little cautious, gotta always be on your toes. But I mean, the fact that Amitabh is doing this had been doing this every weekend for the longest time and then stopped and he's doing it again. Like, It's wild, man. It's wild.
It is wild.
But it makes me happy because like that's a connection to the industry in a way that I don't even think, like, if you say that to someone, it feels like the connection to the industry is so much deeper than even the one we have culturally as Americans.
Well, and it somehow feels less rapacious and less voracious. It's like the level of consumption, like Americans want, and there's also a monetization. I think like there are people who are like, I'm not going to sign another 8x10 for you. You're selling them on eBay.
Right.
I'm done. Like that happens.
Right.
I think there are writers, they're like big genre writers who see the same people who show up at every one of their events. And it's like, dude, this is the 20th book I'm signing for you. Fuck you. Get away. Because it just feels like you don't even give a shit. You're not a fan. You know that I'm famous. You know you can make a few bucks. So you're showing up.
Right.
Now that's the not the majority, obviously, but still it seems like, I've got to get a picture with you. I need to steal something about your fame to hold for myself, which is kind of gross and too bad. So anyway.
Yeah. I can't speak to some of that in Indian culture, but I can speak to the way they're received as I guess pillars of the community, clearly, or pillars of society, or cultural figures, clearly. So until Krish, Richard, what did you think of Mil Gaya? Final thoughts.
I enjoyed it. Like I said, it took me a minute to get on the same wavelength as the movie, but once I did, I found that my pleasure was doubled with everyone, Raj included, even though he was the bad guy. I enjoyed the special effect of Jadoo, and I enjoyed the little details. I really enjoyed it. I'm trying to think of if I would like rush to show it to my family or friends right now and see it again with them. I would say maybe. Like maybe not as much as Doom, just because some of the Doom movies are just so visually dazzling that it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool, right? But I did enjoy it, and I can see why it's so popular, because it wears its heart on its sleeve and it's got a pretty good heart. So I'm in. I give it thumbs up. I know. I'm sorry. That was a terrible pun. I didn't.
Whoa.
Okay. No. Okay. Yeah.
Three thumbs up, Richard.
3 thumbs. Cut that part out. Please.
I already made the note.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No. I insist that you leave it in. I give it 5 stars out of 10. No, I give it. I give it 4 out of 5 stars.
I'm with you. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a movie when I kind of pitched it to you. It sounded like it would be something definitely worth checking out just based on the high concept nature of the idea alone. And, a lot of these movies have a high concept and they don't even remotely get back to the base idea being, the base idea is interesting, but we don't do anything with it. This movie does a lot with it. It goes a lot of places. Not everything is very successful, but most things are. Hrithik Roshan is fantastic. Preeti Zinta is. Everybody in the movie is well cast. It's well shot. It's a good looking movie. I love seeing Indian movies that are shot elsewhere, often places that are very green. New Zealand, I believe.
There was something about the locations that really struck me, where they would. It always felt like they were perched on the edge of a cliff.
Yep.
And then later I read that I guess that was New Zealand.
I honestly thought it was Switzerland, because Yash Raj films in Switzerland are like peanut butter and jelly at this point. So
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, that's where he shot that's where he shot a lot of the like DDLJ and Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. Like a lot of the big movies came out of Switzerland. So there's a lake named for Yash Raj Chopra in Switzerland. Like it's a thing, man. Like yeah. So, but like, again, like it's, the movie is it's a lot of things, but I think you put it best. It's a movie that wears its heart on its sleeve, and it's a genuinely endearing movie in a way that I can't say a lot of these kinds of movies tend to be. And these kinds of movies are, it would be more or less a dime a dozen, at least the kind of thing it's talking about. But I think it does a better job than most of them. So, which is, saying a lot. So until the next time you and I talk about an Indian cinema film, which is more than likely going to be Krish at this point, where can people find you, Richard?
They can find me on HBO Max. Titans season 1, 2, 3, and season 4, part 1 are available right now streaming. You can watch them anytime you want. And sometime in April of 2023, we're going to be releasing the final 6 episodes of the season and the series. And definitely check them all out. I think we wrap things up really nice. So if you do happen to watch those, I'm on Twitter. Let me know what you think. And let me know what you think of Bollywood Cinema Club.
Yeah, let me know, because you can find me at weirdingwaymedia.com, where Richard and I host a show together with our dear friend, Mr. Mike White. And it's all about Rankin and Bass. I would say Christmas movies, but at this point, baby, that's all bets are off. But so many other shows you can find, like Mike White's The Projection Booth, Father Malone's Dark Destinations, and Twisted and Uncorked, 2 women who are much funnier than Richard and I. And that's not really that hard, to be fair. As for me, that's where you can find me. As for this show, BollywoodCinemaClub.com. But like, rate, and review wherever you get the show. That helps us out the most. Richard, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm trying to do a Jadoo impression. I can't. His voice is too echoey.
My pleasure.
My pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure.
And as always, we'll catch you on the next episode.